Live, it's recording at the moment. Great, thank you very much. So I have pleasure in opening the council briefing of the 4th of February 2025 at 6 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that the City of Vincent has a role to play in working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. I note that all councillors are present except for Councillor Castle, who is on an approved leave of absence. Okay, so I'll just move straight to public question time. Can I just get an indication whether any of the members of public present wish to speak? Okay. If you haven't been to a briefing of the City of Vincent before, then we ask that when you come forward, you state your name and the suburb in which you reside and the agenda item number of the item which you are speaking on, please. And we do time to 3 minutes, which you'll be able to see on the screen. The meeting is being live streamed, so if you don't want to appear on the live stream, please let us know at the beginning of your remarks. So whoever wishes to speak first, could you please come forward and address the meeting? And again, reminding you to speak to whichever item it is you're wanting to speak to.
Hello, my name's Kate Parker and I'm from Perth. I'm speaking in support of agenda item 5.6. I'd like to offer my support of the recommendation to not proceed with the artwork currently proposed for the intersection of Brisbane and William Street and to investigate alternative locations. In my capacity as an art consultant, I was invited to be a panel member for this artwork selection back in 2021, I believe. And whilst I support the artwork itself, and in fact I spoke in favour of it in that panel meeting, this location is not appropriate for this artwork. The intersection is already busy and chaotic with a speed limit of 60 k's an hour. The introduction of further distractions, particularly by way of dynamic lighting, should be of considerable concern to the city. In fact, it's been my experience with artworks of a similar nature that I have worked on. Suspending over major intersections are rarely approved by traffic engineers and the authorities due to issues relating to frangibility and traffic concerns. This end of William Street is a thriving local community, as you all well know, with a strong identity and many much-loved local thriving businesses. Uniquely, it is largely grown organically, and the best thing the city can do is to support the success of this area is to minimise intervention to only things that will support its current uses and community, particularly those that the local businesses call for themselves. Tried and tested traffic calming measures, extra shade, greenery and seating would all offer the community significant benefit and contribute to traffic safety. As a resident of the area, I live a few hundred metres away from this intersection. I can also attest to the residential community's desire for this end of Northbridge to retain its village feel and leave the dynamic urban atmosphere to the south end of William Street. For the artwork itself, this location will simply not do it justice. It is truly an amazing artwork and it suits a location hanging above a dynamic town square or similar area where people can pause and ponder it from beneath without concern about the traffic. It has the potential to lend a location of this nature a sense of grandeur that the William Street, Brisbane Street intersection with its village feel and active, engaged community is simply not calling for. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the meeting?
Hello everyone, thank you. I'm also here to speak in favour of item number 5.6.
Would you please state your name and the suburb in which you reside?
Yes, sorry, Emma Pegram, Perth. I'm also here to speak in favour of item 5.6. My name's Emma Pegram. I'm a writer and arts producer and also a local business owner of Wines of Weil at 458 William Street. Firstly, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the City of Vincent and to the Council for listening and for their serious consideration of some concerns that have been raised by the community about this item. Noting that tonight the reasons for the recommendation being made by administration are related mainly to the feasibility of the artwork, I do just want to briefly reiterate the sentiment of the community members that I've spoken with over the past few weeks. Since I lodged the original petition, which you've got in your reports, I've had many further conversations, not only with people who live and work in our neighbourhood, but also those who love to visit. Specifically, I would like to note that I'm speaking tonight on behalf of a number of other business owners from the area. These include Georgia Bisley of Vincent Wine Bar, 465 William Street, Lars Harry and Ida Kim of Shop Mantle, excuse me, who've just taken the lease at 460 William Street, which is the old long vacant gun shop on the corner. Sigala Azizi of Express Kebabs at 455 William Street, Min Duan of OK Vietnamese at 457 William Street, and Alex Sloan of Weston's Barbershop at 456 William Street. As a collective, we feel strongly that the William Street-Brisbane Street intersection is not the right location for the proposed artwork. We welcome the City of Vincent's recommendation that the proposal does not go ahead at this location. The concerns from all members of this collective are consistent and clear. We all observe on a daily basis, as Kate said, how traffic flow at this intersection is chaotic, loud and dangerous. We believe the management of this intersection is out of step with the village feel of the neighbourhood. All members expressed to me that they would love to see these traffic lights replaced with a slowing, pedestrian-friendly roundabout, which would also open up opportunities for tree planting and greening that would make the street more beautiful and more enjoyable. We all also agree that this is not the right location for a major light-based artwork, as such an artwork does not speak to the area's character, and it is not considerate of the organic sense of place created here by everyday people and lifestyles. The proposal represents a massive change for our neighbourhood, and there's been no consultation. Not a single person I've spoken to about it had heard anything about the artwork before I brought it up to them. Actually, with the exception of one who'd heard about it from a friend. We really are a genuine community. We love where we work, and we know that we have a good thing going, and our customers and visitors to the area know it too. Through my many conversations about our town and also through my participation in the William Street Centre Planning Framework workshops, it's clear to me that we're all on the same page about the future of our neighbourhood. Is that my time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much, Emma. Would anyone else like to address the meeting?
Good evening. Scott Robinson, North Perth, and I'm here to talk in favour of item 6.1, the North Perth Tennis Club Female and Accessible Amenities Upgrade. So just quickly who we are. We're one of the oldest community sports clubs in Perth. We've been at 10 Farmer Street, North Perth since 1913. We're a community tennis club open to all comers. The members are overwhelmingly from the City of Vincent, and we have varies between 80 to 100 members up and down each year. What am I here for? We're asking for assistance to upgrade our current female toilet, shower and change room facilities and convert, there's a second toilet there, to convert that to an accessible amenities facility. Why? The current female facilities are in a poor state. They're probably 1980s vintage, I'd say. They're split across two positions within the club room, and they do not present well to potential new and visiting players. And there is no all abilities toilet facility at all. We're looking to grow. What we found, we're not a Premier League club. We're not playing against Cottesloe or the likes. We're just a small, come and have a hit and giggle sort of type club. What we've noticed is that if some people are interested in getting into tennis, they do coaching, and then they come to play club tennis and find there's a really big gap, and they get a bit intimidated and disappear again, never to rear their heads in the world of tennis. So we've sort of started a bit of an introduction to tennis for beginners. It's run by club volunteers, and it surprises how much this has grown just this year. And it's predominantly women too. It's 25 females and 8 males have just turned up this year. and already they're starting to become members of the club. And so we just see it as a big untapped opportunity for getting people who are not sort of strong in sport but want to have a go, and give them more of a comfortable environment to get into. Our club has got proven capability in running projects. We've successfully run an upgrade program over the last 4 years, doing a variety of small and medium-sized projects. Probably our biggest was the $60,000 upgrade of the court lighting. We've got responsible financial management. We run a tight ship. We have in-house expertise to run projects, architectural project management, and some construction personnel. And we've got a great relationship with the City of Vincent, with the City of Vincent staff, councillors, and over many years for various projects and events. So we're an important part of the City of Vincent community. So so we're asking if you could assist us with this upgrade.
Thanks, Scott. Would anyone else like to address the meeting, please?
Oh, yeah. All right, so it's Josh Toppelberg from Subiaco. I'm speaking to item 5.5, which is the William Street Planning Framework. So I've been actively involved in the consultation for the draft guidelines as an interested community member and as a representative of my family who've been landowners of William Street for over 100 years. I attended both the visioning and design workshops and have engaged periodically with other landowners to express our desire to redefine the possibilities for this amazing location. Staff should be commended for capturing the spirit of the consultation in the draft document that's before you, and I won't dwell on the specifics of that too much other than to say that the move to an open car parking model, in my view, is both bold and appropriate. In essence, I think that the officers have largely got it right, with the exception of one critical terminology. So both the William Street Core and Newcastle Street sub-precincts, I believe that the term maximum height is misguided. So Vincent will never be the determining authority for development of 8 stories or more. And as history shows, both the DAP and the WAPC view heights in policy as guidelines for desired outcomes rather than absolute parameters. So we can go into the specifics of that further if anyone wants to, but my request is that you remove the reference to the word maximum and replace it with desired height or something similar. Framework talks about the desired future character, about human scale, and about fine-grained architectural elements at the ground level, about setbacks and respectful design that is not detrimental to neighbouring amenity. It should be very specific about the community benefit for development that proposes to exceed the desired future height, giving decision makers firm guidelines for assessing extraordinary developments rather than just arbitrary height limits. So I'll draw your attention to the city's Leederville precinct structure plan, which has been endorsed by this council. So when addressing height, that structure plan states, it is important that future developments in 10 years plus are not restricted by a low height limit if the demand exists for more. 18 stories in Leederville means that Vincent's established residential areas can experience less pressure for development. So I'm not suggesting in any way that you should be saying William Street should be 18 stories everywhere, but I am suggesting that the council should acknowledge that this is the right location for high density and high buildings. If that philosophy is right for Leederville, then surely the same logic should apply to the William Street Core and Newcastle Street sub-precincts. They're in the 6,000 postcode. They have very low immediate existing residential neighbours. They have outstanding access to alternative transport. They are as walkable as any location in Western Australia, and both the topography and lot orientation of much of the precinct means the overshadowing is a negligible consideration for these lots. So whilst personalities are not generally a consideration in planning matters, there's a unique situation on William Street, and it's reflected in my direct interest and is also worth mentioning. So much of the land between Newcastle and Bulwer Street is in long-held family ownership. The street is littered with pre- and post-war migrant stories and land holdings that have been passed down between 1 and 2 generations. What makes that unique is that over the next 20 years, as the land ownership is diluted and spread between another generation or two, 1 second to go, that development desire and the opportunity is very much palpable on the street. And this is a chance to engage with that opportunity. So the request is singular, and that is that the word maximum is replaced in this location, and that it is either replaced or redefined within the framework. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to address the meeting? Okay, so what's going to happen is a summary of your remarks will be included in the minutes, and any responses where they are required will be on the agenda of the next council meeting. The items that you have mentioned will be brought forward on the agenda and discussed first. And I just want to remind people that no decisions are made tonight because it's a briefing. It's for councillors to ask questions to the administration on the items on the agenda. So we'll be making decisions next week. If you feel like you wish to come along and address the council again, that's of course your right. So there being no further questions, I close public question time at 6:15. Okay, Governance Manager, have any statements been received?
Mayor Simon, we've received no statements.
Okay. CEO, do you have any declarations of interest that have been presented?
None received for this evening, Mayor Zaman.
Can I just ask, do any councillors have any declarations of interest that they wish to declare tonight? Okay. So, Councillor Warner, which items do you wish to discuss tonight?
5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and I think the others are all covered. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wallace.
Just 6.3, thank you.
Councillor Lafontaine.
8.2, thank you.
Councillor Castle. Oh, sorry, she's not here. So I won't ask her. Councillor Greer.
Nothing further from me. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Alexander. Councillor Wolf.
8.1 and 8.5, please.
And Councillor Hallett. Okay, and the ones that I wanted to list have already been mentioned as well. Okay, so I'll just quickly organise the order. Okay, so now we'll go to the first item, which is 5.6, response to petition William Street Town Centre Public Artwork Commission. Do any councillors have any questions pertaining to this matter? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. I don't quite know where to start with this. Why wasn't the Arts Advisory Group or a councillor involved in any of the assessments when this was first done 4 years ago? That's my first question, I guess.
Through the Mayor, there was a representative from the Arts Advisory Group on the evaluation panel.
Thank you, but it didn't go to the Arts Advisory Group as a whole. So we're looking at, in this case, there's two artworks, two major pieces that we were looking to commission, and neither of them went past the Arts Advisory Group for us to actually have any comment on. So I'm just seeing some problems in the how this was achieved. And the assessments that the council voted on said that, I can't bring it up word for word, but basically when council voted on these, it was with the assurances, I guess, that this was okay to proceed with in these locations. Neither of these artworks have been able to be delivered, both for the same sort of reasons. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can learn from that and we can do more from that, because we put ourselves out there to be the arts centre of WA or Perth, and so far we haven't really delivered much in that way.
Through the Mayor, just circling back to the Arts Advisory, we'll provide a bit more information in the briefing notes about that, because I do understand that At some point, it did go through the Arts Advisory, but I want to check back through the notes on that. In terms of the locations, I would say that's not the fault of either of the artists or the artwork that's been designed. These artworks were delivered as part of the COVID Arts Relief Program. It was an accelerated time frame to try and get some activation and inject some money into the arts community. The preliminary work to identify locations and do a deeper dive on that probably didn't exist. And absolutely something that we can learn from. If we were to do a major artwork again, the city would probably need to bear the cost of doing some more detailed engineering and geotechnical investigations if we were going to look at a substantial artwork like the two artworks that we do have, because as you've noted, that has resulted in significant delays to both of the artworks being installed.
Thank you very much. And yes, I agree with you that this is no disparity on the artworks. We've got, I think the word, this needs to be installed in a place of grandeur. Alison throwing her mallet around is absolutely apt. We've got some terrific pieces here and no disparity on those whatsoever. I just would like us to be able to deliver and to have learned from this. I need to make that into a question. So do you agree?
Yes, I agree. Next time we do such significant artworks, we will do a lot more preliminary works.
Okay, do you have any further questions? Does anyone else? Yes, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. The main reason for not proceeding here, according to the report, is the cost of the footings. I couldn't find in the report what the cost of the footings is. So do you have an estimate on that?
Through the Mayor, no, we haven't included it in the report. The cost of the footings and engineering works wasn't factored into the artwork contract. So that would sit outside of that and that would be at the cost of the artist. And basically they've indicated that that is too prohibitive to proceed for them. And in addition, having seen the engineering drawings, our engineering team is not supportive of the scale that would need to occur.
Okay, do we have an estimate of what the footing cost would be in this location?
And through the Mayor, we can look to put something in the briefing notes if appropriate.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions in relation to this item? Okay, so now I'll move on to the next item, which is 6.1, Community Sporting and Recreation Facilities Fund application for the North Perth Tennis Club amenities upgrade. Are there any questions in relation to this matter? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Xamon, and it's so exciting to see this proposal come forward. But I have a couple of small detailed questions. In the design, I just wanted to confirm that we're looking at making the bathrooms and the shower for the women accessible, but there isn't an accessible shower in the design. Does that make, there's not a shower to accessible standards? It's just the bathroom that's being made accessible.
Through the chair, we'll make that those notes available in the briefing notes. Sorry.
Excellent, thank you. And one more, it's so great that we're looking at making that bathroom accessible, and it might be my understanding of reading the designs, but I just wanted to confirm it's got a new sliding door going into the bathrooms, and I just wanted to confirm if that would be an automatic door, and if that's covered in the cost rather than just a manual sliding door.
Once again, through the chair, we'll put those details in the briefing notes for you.
Great, thank you. That was all my questions.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so then I'm going to move on. So that's 5.5, advertising of the draft William Street planning framework. And we did have a question from the floor. Does anyone wish to ask the question? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Yeah, just following up on the comment from the gallery about what are your thoughts on comment about changing the definition of max to design height or something in that context?
As I'm on the terminology that we had landed on, which was maximum, I guess, reflects some of our more recent planning frameworks that we've adopted, as well as the draft leadable precinct structure plan. So that was really the extent of the science. As for the suggestion from the gallery, we can certainly review and update the terminology if appropriate.
Okay, I'm just noting, of course, that it's going to be going out for public consultation. So all of these things can be captured in with additional feedback. Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question about the strategic development sites, which there's more of them in the Beaufort Street plan, but in the William Street there is some large ones. And those are the ones where we focused the particularly high story levels. I'm just wondering if you can explain to me, in my ignorance, whether, I guess, why we don't have the potential to do something similar on other lots which aren't single lots, but adjacent lots, which might be owned by different people, but to, I guess, establish that with the right setbacks and the particular height, you could develop something more substantial. A single lot might not be able to meet the setback requirements, and so wouldn't actually do it. But if there was some kind of collaboration between adjacent sites.
Mesamon, yes, so the framework at the moment identifies two particular strategic development sites, but it also identifies that if you can get a site of 1,000 square metres together, you can also go higher, and that's within the, I guess, that main William Street kind of corridor. So that was really in recognition that there would need to be land assembly to take place and to incentivise amalgamation.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so we're moving on. So the next item is 5.1, Oxford Street, Leederville, proposed change of use from small bar to tavern. Councillor Warner, you had some questions.
Yes, thank you. Where do I start? My first question is about the discretion that's been tipped to be granted here on the 31 parking bays with the onset of an extra 200 patrons that equates to 31 parking bays, and it's been acknowledged that there's nowhere for them to actually have them, and even if there was, we probably wouldn't want them. But because there's certainly the public transport access, but we've got in here that we would give them the discretion of not having to pay for that. Whereas I'm curious to know if that's been applied to other businesses in very similar situations.
Through Mesamon, so as part of the assessment for this application, we've assessed the parking against the draft leadable precinct structure plan, which we've provided a significant amount of weight to on the basis that it's been adopted by council and has been through consultation, but also that it has been considered by the WAPC with some modifications requested to the framework. Noting that no modifications have been requested to the parking ratio set out in the draft. So on that basis, we've applied a lot of, well, we've called it significant weighting to those new provisions under the draft policy, and that's been consistent with established case law for the consideration of draft planning instruments as a consideration under the planning regulations. But to take a little bit of a step back, essentially the small bar has operated on the site with no parking bays since 2020, I think it was, end of December 2020, and that was with 120 patrons. They're essentially seeking to increase the patron number up to 200 customers plus staff, and the leadable precinct structure plan now, which came in to be a seriously entertained document following that initial approval, sets no minimum standards for car parking. So with all that in mind, and placing significant weight on those adopted provisions opposed to our non-residential parking policy, which they would replace likely when the draft is presented back to the WAPC. It's reasonable in this instance to waive cash in lieu.
Okay, so just so I get my head around it, so if there were other businesses in that precinct who weren't afforded that discretion, we could say that was happening. That was because that was maybe dated before the latest planning, leadable precinct plan, etc. Would that be a way to interpret that?
Through you, Ms. Amon, yes, if a previous application was considered under a different planning framework, then the conditions applied against that decision would remain. But any proposals moving forward throughout the precinct would be considered on their merits against the same framework.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councillor Hallett.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that? Have we got any, and I suspect this is not a planning consideration, but just in the context of this application, have we done any modelling around the impact on the parking, the car parks, and in consideration of the additional, I guess, loads that would require, also with subsequent years where we're going to have issues when we're doing the larger development?
Through you, Ms. Amon, yes, as part of this application, the applicant did submit a traffic impact statement that discusses expected trip generation to the use, which is, trip generation for the tavern use. Happy to provide some numbers from that in the briefing notes, as well as some capacity rates for our car parks in Leederville. Yes, so.
Thank you. And just a separate one, do we have access to any police data on alcohol-related violence in Leederville?
Through Ms. Amon, we can take that on notice.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Ms. Amon. Just one question around the environmentally sustainable design part of the pack. We've got there that the draft Leederville precinct structure plan are required to comply with the environmentally sustainable design requirements, and that under this proposal, the applicant hasn't demonstrated that one of the performance standards has been achieved. I was just wondering if you've got any reflections on why that is, and if there was any possibility of getting any way towards those goals in this application.
Through you, Ms. Amon, yes, we did discuss it with the applicant. The consideration largely relates to ventilation. So in discussions with the applicant, it's likely they would mechanically ventilate the area, essentially turning it into an indoor space. That would likely meet NCC requirements at the building permit stage and for ventilation standards. And they would also just need to submit an amended acoustic report for noise mitigation. In this instance, we considered that it was appropriate to not require a full environmentally sustainable design report for the scale of development proposed, given its the alfresco roof and also the benefits it brings in noise mitigation as well.
Great, thank you. That was all.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so then I'll move on to the next item, which is 5.2 Fitzgerald Street, North Perth, proposed change of use from restaurant cafe to restaurant cafe and small bar. Okay, are there any questions in relation to this item? Councillor Warner, I note that you had some questions. Okay. Did anyone else have any questions? Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Ms. Amon. Yes, just one question. In regards to the change in operating hours, I found the table on page 13 useful in comparing the consistency with the other venues in both the context and the opening times. But in terms of the overall operating hours, how does the proposed change compare? And given that one of the key concerns raised previously during the community consultation was operating hours, would it be possible to include, for comparison, in the briefing notes, the information from the other venues in the table, specifically operating hours and or closing times? Thank you.
Through you, Ms. Amon, we've focused on the opening time precedent with other venues for the purpose of this report, and that's really on the basis that's the scope of the application, just between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. However, happy to include some further information in the briefing notes on closing times to give you an idea of the full scope of those operations for other cafes.
Thank you.
I had a question in relation to the opening hours as well, noting that one of the key concerns that the residents have is about the noise of delivery trucks before 7 o'clock in the morning. And of course, we do have noise limitations prior to 7 a.m. Has there been any assessment done of the likelihood of increase of noise with delivery trucks coming in before 7 o'clock and what the potential impact could be?
Yes. So essentially, the applicant has indicated they wish to keep the deliveries from 7 a.m. as well. So that would remain a condition of approval that all deliveries must be after 7 a.m. I believe that following some reports that deliveries were occurring before that late last year, our teams have been in discussions with the applicants and that's since changed.
Okay, so it would be a specific condition that basically the applicant feels confident that they would be able to start delivering on coffees and the like at 7 o'clock in the morning, even though the deliveries are coming potentially at the same time. They don't see that that's a problem and that they'll be able to manage that condition.
Yes, I believe so. That's what they've sought. They haven't sought any changes to the existing condition, which is all deliveries shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I also had a question in relation to the local traffic, the local traffic work that's being undertaken at the moment, which is precinct-wide and is extensive. And thank you very much to the team for doing that. I know there's a deadline of April 2025, but I was just wondering, are there any short-term measures or some obvious measures like extending the yellow line to prohibit parking directly outside the venue that could be considered before that date? Because I do know this is an issue that the local residents have raised directly with the council at least since November.
Yes, so we did receive a request late 2023 requesting an extension of the yellow line along the northern side of Venn Street. So those works were undertaken in August last year, where we extended the yellow line from the intersection of Venn and Fitzgerald Street about 100 metres to the east along Venn Street to about, I think it's number 42 Venn Street. And that essentially would restrict on-street parking to the northern side of Venn Street to reduce parking on both sides of the street. Having a look at some of our aerial imagery, it seems to be successful, and it also would assist in reducing parking on adjacent verges as well, and that's accompanied by no parking or no standing signs on each end of that strip.
Okay, so that detail will be in the briefing, or?
Sure, I can include that in the briefing.
Yes, thank you very much. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? Councillor Hallett.
Seeing your note there, just to confirm for the public, the small bar operation wouldn't be commencing at 7 a.m, would it?
No. Well, essentially, the applicant is intending to operate the cafe from 7 a.m. in the morning, noting that operation of the small bar is proposed to be afternoon and would be guided through their liquor licence.
Okay, are there any other questions in relation? You might have to just have your booze at home. Anyone else want to ask any questions in relation to this item? Okay, so I'll move on to the next one, which is 5.3, proposed amendment number 13 to local planning scheme number 2 and review of local planning policy, short-term accommodation. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. I'm getting up with the acronyms on this. The STRA. Everyone's now supposed to be registered as of January 25. Is that retrospective? Is that just new STRAs, or is that all of them out there who want to operate as such?
Through you, Mayor Zaman, my understanding is if you're intending to operate as of the 1st of January, you are required to register.
How is that sort of checked or policed?
DMERs are responsible for managing that register. Lost my train of thought. So DMERs are responsible for managing that register. So from a state government perspective, I understand that there is conversations with our compliance team if there is complaints, but I guess that's mostly left up to DMERs in their capacity as the owner of that process.
I've got a question, if that's okay. Could you please tell me what legal barriers would exist if the City of Vincent were to decide to just ban unhosted short-term residential accommodation in the bounds of our council?
To you, Mayor Zaman. I'll try and limit the acronyms here. In terms of banning unhosted short-term accommodation, I guess the part of the report that's relevant to that is the amendment to the city's planning scheme. So through our planning scheme, council has the opportunity to determine what land use permissibility it wants to assign to unhosted accommodation, whether that is permitted, discretionary, or not permitted. If council were of the view to make that not permitted, we would advise that. That would come back to council for, I guess, a final recommendation to consider any submissions that were received. And then the scheme amendment would be forwarded to the West Australian Planning Commission, who would make a recommendation to the minister. So I guess the long and the short of it is the land use permissibility isn't something that council would have the ultimate approval of. We can certainly put forward its views and its rationale for that, but ultimately it would need to be signed off by the minister. The guidance that the Department of Planning has provided to local governments in doing this scheme amendment to get consistency with the planning regs is that unhosted short-term rental accommodation should be either a discretionary or a use, which is discretionary, that requires advertising. That's to reflect the exemptions that the regulations currently provide for with unhosted accommodation, being able to operate without approval for 90 days. So I guess an observation would be an X use would be inconsistent with the changes that the state government made to the regulations last year. And I'm not sure how successful that would be.
But it could potentially be successful, is what you're saying. I heard that you didn't say that. You said you couldn't guarantee, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a possibility that it could be potentially banned in all of Vincent, unhosted short-term rental accommodation, if an amendment were to be presented potentially at the next meeting.
You, Mayor Zaman, we can provide an update through the briefing notes once I wrap my head around that.
Thanks very much. And further to that, I'd like to know that if Vincent was to potentially agree, if the council was to be that way inclined, I'd also like to have an understanding of what that would mean to existing approvals, please.
To you, Mayor Zaman, yes, we can certainly provide that advice. I guess in the short, any existing approvals would still be allowed to continue under the terms of their approval, so it wouldn't apply retrospectively.
Thanks. Sorry, Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. Following on from Mayor Zamon's comments there, would it be possible in the briefing notes, I guess through this policy amendment, my first question I guess then is, what consideration has been given to limit the number of nights of unhosted short stay whole house accommodation within this policy?
Mayor Zaman, so the policy provides for a limitation on generally 2 nights and then 3 nights as a minimum if you fall over a weekend. So I guess the logic for that was really to dissuade people from a party house and make them stay the extra night.
Excellent, thank you. And I can understand that 3 nights over the weekend, but a cumulative total throughout the whole year. Have we put any restrictions or limitations on the number of nights you could have someone in your property of an unhosted accommodation?
Mayor Zaman, no, we haven't.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get in the briefing notes some possibilities of what it might look like to limit those nights? And I know some councils have done that, along with the recommendation of how it's possible to ban them entirely. Moving on to a few more specifics. Page 176, I think it is a typo, but I just want to understand. I'm reading it, it's got allowing a maximum of 4 visitors with no visitors between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. But my read of the policy is we are allowing visitors between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. So can I just check that was a typo in the summary document and that we are allowing visitors between 7 and 10?
Mayor Zaman, yes, that should have been flipped.
Excellent, thank you. And I just, that same section, I have a question around limiting guests to 2 per bedroom. Have we put any provisions there if that is an adult guest, 2 per bedroom, or are we, would that include children as well?
To Mayor Zaman, the policy identifies that excludes persons under the age of 18.
Excellent, thank you. And my last question is just about animal management. One of the challenges of Airbnbs is perhaps pets coming along for the holiday and being left in small places and barking all day. What provisions have we given in this policy around kind of animal management and particularly not leaving noisy dogs alone all day?
Through you, Mayor Zaman, how pets would be managed, including whether they are permitted in the first instance, is something that we've added to be addressed through a management plan to dissuade that.
Excellent, thank you. Is there anything we can put in the policy rather than the management plan around animal management or noisy dogs?
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we can consider through the briefing notes.
Excellent, thank you. And for the record, I'm not against dogs, just barking ones all day. Thank you.
Although if it's a cat, it can stay inside. Okay, would anyone else? Councillor Hallett.
Just back to the DEMA's registration list. Looking at the site, it looks like you can look up specific places, but there's not like a list in an area. I'm just wondering if administration has any capacity to compare the list that they would have with what we've got, to get a sense of potentially how many we were unaware of previously, because I know it was always a bit of a just facing them through complaints, and also whether I don't know to what extent the state government's notified or advertised the requirement publicly, so whether we've let people know that do have an approved one within Vincent that they need to register.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we can provide that through the briefing notes.
Are there any other questions pertaining to this item? Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next item, and that is asbestos, 6.3, I should say, asbestos removal and encapsulation, Betty Park LC Grandstand. Councillor Warner, you're down as having questions.
I think it was me, Mayor Zaman.
Sorry, Councillor Wallace. So, Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to request a copy of the asbestos register, the asbestos management plan and the air monitoring results that's referred to in the report, if possible.
Through you, Mayor Zaman. Yes, that's possible. We can do that.
Okay, I've got a question, if that's okay. We're spending almost $1 million trying to encapsulate that as the asbestos. I just want to ask, how does that expenditure of encapsulating rather than removing sit with Phase 3 Asbestos National Strategic Plan 2024 to 2030, which is proposing that local councils be compelled to remove all its asbestos from its venues, and that is unfunded? I just want to get a clear idea about. I don't want to be spending $1 million to encapsulate something that we are soon going to be told we have to rip out.
Good question to you, Mayor Zavon. We need to seek further clarification on the actions within the draft. Well, it's not actually no longer a draft plan. I believe it was adopted late last year. So we need to seek further clarification on the roles and responsibilities of local governments and how we are to implement those actions.
Okay, so I understand that the issue of whether councils are going to be compelled to have to remove the asbestos in their buildings is still subject to discussion and hopefully determination in the next few months. If council were to determine that we consider it prudent to hold off on this expenditure until we have an idea about whether we are going to be compelled to have to remove it anyway, can I get an idea of what sort of hazard that poses and how much of a risk this is until we know that?
Mayor Spon, certainly we can seek further clarification and provide that back to you in the briefing notes.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. Just a question on how, if this was to proceed, how it might impact the operations at Beatty Park, and if you can see any impact on those operations, and particularly before the different respondents, if they were looking at managing it differently in terms of its impact on operations.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we work closely with the tender documents to give options on how we would remove that. And one of the key options there is to make sure, key stipulations is to make sure the Beatty Park Leisure Centre remains operational while remaining safe. So this option to encapsulate has nighttime works, daytime works, hoarding, regular testing, site supervision and monitoring of air. So we're fairly confident that they'll be able to do that. This is a well-reputed company that does this on a regular basis. So we would take those risks under our belt and look at it with our work health and safety hat on and make sure those all encapsulated and safe for both staff and patrons to the facility and surrounding neighbours as well.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question, if this didn't proceed in the timeline here, would you see there's any impact on the operations of Beatty Park as well?
Yes, currently we have eliminated access to the grandstand as we speak, which is currently affecting how we maintain our HVAC and plumbing throughout the facility at this stage.
Thank you. That was all my questions.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. So if this project is seeking to make the grandstand safe in terms of asbestos, could I just please check what else would need to be done to make the grandstand publicly accessible? Thank you.
Through you, Ms. Zorn. Good question. I'll take some of this on notice, but I do believe that, yes, in terms of asbestos, it would be made safe, but we would have to bring the grandstand up to today's building code for it to be functional again as a public building.
Can I just confirm, because this is, of course, a state heritage listed site of significance to the state government, have the state government, of course, offered to put any monies towards these necessary remediation works at all?
No.
Oh, curious. Okay, are there any other questions from anyone else? Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Mayor Simon. Just kind of poking around the same things I think Councillors Wolf and Greer were. So the only operations that are going on inside the grandstand is just maintenance for plumbing and HVAC. Could I maybe have a response in the briefing notes about how that maintenance could be undertaken if we were not to do these works and the asbestos was to remain in place, so, you know, like PPE or other controls for those works? Because I'd imagine they're relatively infrequent, the access is required on the inside.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we can provide those details. Being a large facility of many different ages and renovations, we do have a lot of equipment, HVACs across the building, and the main point of access to that, the solar panels on the roof, plumbing, downpipes, everything's through that grandstand. Very difficult to get up to that higher level, but we'll provide some details through the briefing notes.
Okay, yeah. The assumption might be incorrect, but yeah, thanks.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next item, which is 8.1, appointment of electoral commissioner to conduct the City of Vincent ordinary election on the 18th of October this year. Councillor Wolf, you had some questions.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not an insignificant amount of money that we're talking about, and I'm just quite conscious that we've experienced issues in the procedures relating to our elections. I mean, I can speak to the previous round, but I understand in previous years as well. One example being the introduction of new and unlegislated requirements in the nomination process at the last election. So I'm just wondering if those issues were raised with the Electoral Commissioner in previous rounds and what we can do to ensure that those procedural issues don't occur again in the future. Thanks.
Through the chair. Yes, so prior to the last election, we met with the Electoral Commission to talk about our concerns from the 2019 or the 2021 election, and that resulted in us being assigned a different returning officer. There were numerous issues at the last election, and we provided a very comprehensive submission and response to survey. WALGA also conducted a survey of local governments specifically on the topic of how was your returning officer. What typically will happen is once we appoint the Electoral Commissioner, we will have a meeting with them to talk about the next steps for the election. I will attend that along with David, and we will again give our feedback about that and make certain requests about the returning officer and our expectations on the day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if there's any opportunity to provide input as people who've been through that process, then really happy to do that. Thank you. That was all.
Well, we've all been through that process, haven't we? Would anyone else? Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Just in relation to the broader issue of election and getting bigger turnout, and just wondering whether administration has already put thought to the promotion and comms strategies around it, and where that budget will come from, because that would be on top of this as well.
Through the chair, we hadn't given any specific thought to additional budget. Typically, our marketing team will roll out a campaign on our various social media and things like that that can be accommodated within the existing budget. If there's specific things that go beyond what we've done in previous years that you'd be interested in, I'm happy to get that feedback.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. Just one point of clarification. Point 2, we've got that the election will be by postal vote, and I just want to confirm that in-person voting will still be available to some people to drop off their ballot paper here as part of that postal process.
Yes, through the chair. So in terms of when it means conducted via postal vote, they all get sent out by the post. If anyone needs a replacement ballot, they're available still at the front counter, and people can drop off those ballots throughout the election period and on the day.
Thank you. That was all.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so then I will move on to the next item, which is 8.2, review of council proceedings, recording and web streaming policy. Councillor LaFontaine, you had some questions.
Yes, just one question. Thank you, Mayor Zaman. So just currently we have the archive recordings on our website. We've had them since 2017, and the new regulation that replaces our policy, that one states that there's a requirement for at least the end of the period of 5 years after the meeting day. So I'm just wondering if you could provide some clarity on the intention on keeping all of the archived records, or whether we're just going to follow the 5 years previous.
Through the chair, I think as much as the marketing team would like us to remove some of the content from the website because it's taking up a lot of space, our intention is not to follow that. We'll continue for the period that we do have the recordings available, we'll continue to make them publicly available on our website. They're an invaluable resource for the staff as well as the members of the public.
Great, thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so then I move to 8.5, the information bulletin. Councillor Wolf, you had some questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question in relation to the Angrove Street petrol station matter, please. The original 2023 appeal matter. I just wanted to confirm, please, whether the applicant did provide the additional information that was due on the 31st of January. And then secondly, if there's anything that can be shared about the nature of that information, then that would be great. Thank you.
Mayor Zaman, this is an appeal against the DAP decision, so all correspondence is through the state government. We can seek an update from the DAP, but we haven't been notified that additional information has been received, so I wouldn't be able to respond to your follow-on query. We'll seek confirmation and confirm that in the briefing notes.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Okay, so there being no further items, I thank the public who have been in attendance and the live stream viewers, and I close the meeting at 7:01.